Hello there, audience member. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple ring out of wooden wire. This method of making a ring is cheap and only requires a few tools, but can be varied in many ways depending on your tastes. I'm not incredibly experienced in making rings, but I just wanted to demonstrate one way that I've been able to consistently make rings that I am quite fond of. A lot of the making of the ring is very tedious work, so I've tried my best to cut short all of the repetitive parts for the sake of keeping your interest. So, without further ado, let's get started. First of all, we're going to have to cut out the wooden body of the ring. For this, we're just going to use some plywood. It doesn't really matter how thick it is, as long as you can cut it down to shape. And it should only be a square that's about 1.5 inches across. I wouldn't really recommend making a cutout that's any smaller than this. I mean, it really depends on the size of your fingers. I have quite large fingers, but if the section that you cut out is too big, you can just sand it down, but if it's too small, you're going to have to restart. So just be careful about it. So this next quick section, we're just going to mark off the corners, and this is going to be where we cut it off, so that it saves us a lot of time in the sanding process. We're just going to be cutting these off using the same saw that we used earlier. As I was doing this in this recording, I realized that there was a whole little chunk missing in the section of the plywood. So I decided, this was going to undermine the integrity of the ring, so I cut out a new little piece, as you see right here. But as you can see, it's a more circular shape, which is the shape we're going for. For this next part, you're going to want to take a drill bit, which the size really depends, mainly on the type of Dremel tool you're going to be using, because that's the second type of tool we're going to use. What I do is, as I'll show you in a few moments, is I put a sanding bit for Dremel into the hole that I drill, and it spins the wood around. So the main objective is you're going to want to have a hole that you can fit a Dremel bit in snugly. So pick a drill bit that will allow you to get the hole to a size where you can snugly fit a Dremel bit into it. For this next section, safety goggles or some type of eye protection is very important, and I'd also recommend getting some breathing protection, because we're going to be using the Dremel tool, as you can see here, and we're going to be trying to expand the hole using a smaller sanding bit, a smaller diameter sanding bit, so that eventually we're going to be able to fit a larger sanding bit into it very snugly. As you can see here, I've spent some time and I've now gotten the hole to the size where I can just barely fit the bigger diameter sanding bit into it. What I do now is I kind of use the Dremel like an improvised lathe. As you see, what I'm about to do here is I don't have sanding paper, so I just had to use a flap wheel for an angle grinder, and as you're gonna see right here, I use the sanding bit for the angle grinder to try and make the ring into a circular shape. This takes the most time, I'd say, out of the entire project, but as you can see here, like, it's starting to circularize the corners of the ring. And that's basically the shape of the ring that you're gonna be going for. And again, this takes a lot of time, and it throws a lot of wood dust into the air. That's why I recommended safety goggles. But yeah, just keep on going at it until the entirety of the ring reaches a circular shape. As you see here, I still have a couple rough corners, so I'm gonna keep going at it until it gets to that size. Another thing to keep in mind at this stage is you don't want to sand off too much. You want it to reach the circular outside shape, but if it gets too small, you won't be able to make it into a ring size for your fingers. So that's the problem that I'm about to encounter here with this variation of the ring, as I had cut the piece too small, and I wasn't actually able to get the corners circularized with enough material left on the actual ring itself to keep it together. So it started falling apart, and I ended up having to just discard the thing as a whole, which is a shame. It spent a lot of time to do, but like I said earlier, it's better to err on the larger side and get a lot more material, as you can see right here. So I just did the exact same thing again. Keep in mind that if it's not symmetrical, it might be a bit more unpredictable in the way that it swings around the Dremel tool. In fact, there's many cases where the Dremel bit and the wood on top of it have just flung off, and that's more reason as to why you need to wear eye protection for this project. That might just be because I have a really faulty Dremel tool. I think it is a pretty old Dremel, but again, you don't want to be losing an eye over this project, so just wear safety goggles, other safety equipment like that. Now, since you've already seen the process, I'm just going to speed up the video a little bit. But it's kind of cool to see how the shape circularizes throughout the motion of it.
Oh my god. I don't think I broke my Dremel.
No, I didn't actually break my Dremel. I'm just really, really dumb sometimes.
I was pushing the wrong way. Nice.
Now, what you can do if you don't have any type of sanding paper, even a grinding wheel, like I did, you can just use a knife, but be very careful with this. If you're using a folding knife and the knife is going in the wrong direction, if it catches on the spinning of the wheel, it will close on your fingers and cut them off, so just be very careful about that. The process is a bit slower this way, but it is a way of doing it if you really want to go through with it. Now, after I was done circularizing the outside, I realized, hey, this looks pretty good. It's all circular and whatnot, but it does have a little hole in it. So I'm going to have to fix that later on, but I'll show you how to do that. Now, the next part is really only if you want to have a groove to set something in. As you can see here, I'm holding the knife upright, and as I'm going to show you now. Yeah, here you are. I'm using the knife to cut out a little channel in the inner part. It's kind of hard to see here because my camera is garbage and doesn't focus well. But you kind of get the general gist of it. You just kind of push the tip of the knife in and dig out material as you go. Now, you can use the knife for other reasons, like you can cut little lines into the outside of the ring for decorative purposes, but for this ring I cut out a channel because I wanted to lay some wire around it for decorative reasons. Now, this little video clip is just me comparing the size of the outside bit to other rings that I've already completed, and this is just because if this is your first time making a ring, you might not always know what size to cut it down to. But this is just to clarify that the outer dimensions of this ring at this point are the final dimensions. Now, this next bit is where I'm going to be cutting out the central part of the wheel. So I went back to the smaller diameter sanding bit, and this part's also pretty time consuming, but you just go around sanding off the inside part of the ring, and you got to be very careful with your hold on it, because as you see there, it just kind of flew out of my hands. Yeah, the sanding bit flew off and the ring went into oblivion.
Where did that go?
It took me 15 minutes to find both of them.
That's really annoying.
Just goes to show how annoying it is. The ring itself flew backwards right there. And, well, as you can see, it ended up over there for some reason. Now, once you're done sanding out the inside part, there's a rule of thumb, anyways, is that you should get it just a bit bigger so that it doesn't barely fit over the finger that you want it to fit on. As you can see here, I designed it for my ring finger, and as you can see, I can put it on, but it's just too tight and you can't actually get it off at this point. So this actually is really annoying if you are wearing it in public and you want to get it off, so you just are gonna have to sand it down a little bit more. And after I was done sanding it, it functions like a normal ring. You can take it on and off as you please. As you see, here it's on, and just using one hand I take it back off. Boom. Now we're ready to move on to the next stage. Yay. Yeah, you're gonna need some extra materials, some different types of wire. So initially I wanted to use this smaller galvanized steel wire. And what I was planning on doing is just wrapping it around the inside of the channel and then using some copper-coated iron wire to go on either side of that. And you're going to need a pair of wire clippers. That's the last set of tools you're really going to need. And some super glue to set it in. So once I had wrapped it in, I thought, okay, cool, we're good to go. I can super glue this in, it'll all be good. But the problem is wire doesn't really like to hold the shape tightly of the channel of the ring. So I wasn't actually able to go through with putting on this or the copper coated iron wire. As you could see when I was using the super glue on that type of wire, it just wouldn't hold the shape. That's not very circular looking. So I had to resort to using the thicker galvanized steel wire. And basically what I did is I just took a strand that could barely fit around it, and I hammered it flat and glued it in. In the process of doing this, it actually split the ring down the middle. As you can see, there's like a little gap there. So I'm going to have to fill that in. But all I had to do for that was just, put a little bit of super glue on it and sprinkle some wood dust into it. Here is a very excellent short demonstration of how to flatten out the steel galvanized wire. You take a workbench, a hammer, and a bit of wire, and you beat the crap out of the wire. it's very under-exaggerated, but you just do that until it reaches the desired width. Not that hard to do. And yeah, that actually holds the shape of the ring a lot better, and I kind of like the look of it, I think, a lot better than I would have liked the thinner wire combination. So now all I have to do is just use some super glue and some sawdust and fill in the inner part. And then once all three of these wooden and wire parts are glued together and there's the sawdust filling, we can sand it off and polish it up and we'll be done. Yay. So here we are. I just kind of cut it out because I was really frustrated with this project at this point. I didn't normally break quite as many times as it did, but as you can see here, I just kind of dripped some super glue, sprinkled some sawdust onto it, and I made a filling for it. The filling is kind of mismatching with the rest of the color because it has a lot of super glue content, but otherwise I think the ring looks quite nice. I rather like it. So yeah, this variation of ring making can be done in several different ways. It just kind of really depends on your imagination and what materials you have at hand. You don't have to stick to this guide. It's just what I do. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video because I enjoyed making this build. And if you like the video, drop a like. And if you have any suggestions for the next video, put it in the comments. And I guess that's it. I'll see you guys next time.